So we enter into the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita today. We've been going through the various teachings of Krishna through the first 14 chapters. And we all know the context of Gita, of the distress of Arjuna and the bewilderment, and Krishna teaching him self-knowledge, what is right action, what is right wisdom, and what is the right way to relate to everything and everyone. So this has all been set forth very beautifully in various topics before this. And now, in this chapter called Purushottama Yoga, everything is brought together in the most condensed way. That is why it is considered a very special chapter. In fact, the last verse of this, if we take it first, interestingly, it says, Iti guhyatamam shastram idam uktam mayanaga. He says, I have revealed to you the most confidential shastra. So this is an expression that is used only for 15th chapter. So there are 18 chapters of Gita, as we know, and the entire Gita is called Shastra. So we call it Gita Shastra. Shastra means that which truly gives us the highest wisdom, which awakens our heart and brings forth right action without doership, and love and wisdom and all of that. That is the purpose of all Upanishads. That is the purpose of the teachings of all the great sages. And that's what's called Shastra. But interestingly, in the 15th chapter, the chapter alone is called as, this chapter alone is called Shastra. And this is the only chapter which also has a, what is called a Palashruti. That is, listening to this very chapter, he says, Etad buddhva buddhimansya kritakrityascha bharata. By simply understanding this one chapter, you have accomplished everything. This is what Krishna says. So this is the grand promise made by Krishna to Arjuna here and to all of us, that kritakrityas kritya means whatever is to be done is done. So the accomplishing of the purpose of human life, we can say in that way, is recognizing the highest wisdom, which is known as self-realization or God realization, whatever term we use. That is the purpose, because without that, what we see so many conflicts that are there in the general way in which humans live life. So we have a very curious mixture, because we as human species have certain faculties which are available only to us, not only speaking language, comprehending, but also contemplating on our own nature. So when we have this ability, we, on the other hand, what we end up doing is we always get caught in this identity as a separate self, as a separate ego. So the very faculty that is available to us through thinking, intellectual understanding, ability to speak, communicate, all of this becomes, in fact, agencies for more destruction. So normally, if you look at it, even so, animals, they have their own way of living. they just focus on survival and reproduction, and they kill for whatever they need to kill to eat and so on. But they don't engage in the kind of conflict, violence, wars, all of which humans uniquely go through, because the very faculties that are unique to humans are put to use in the wrong way in service of the ego. So we get identified as this separate sense of me, and the sense of me is conditioned by society, and we are taking that to be me without ever questioning. We are taking the body, the mind, the various memories, experiences, knowledge, all of this together. We create an entity called me, and we think I am the thinker, I am the doer, I am the enjoyer, I am the experiencer. And because we have created this illusion of a separate entity, this illusion is causing us to therefore engage in more conflicts and more exploitation and comparison and all the rest that goes on. So the purpose of human existence is to transcend this division, this duality, and recognize the non-dual nature of existence itself. So when we say non-dual, what it simply points to is that there is the divine energy that is all pervading, and that alone manifests as everyone and everything there is. And we will see that in this chapter specifically with so many beautiful pointers by Krishna, that even something as simple as our digestion, which comes in this chapter, is happening by the divine energy. So everything that happens, starting from eating food, digesting, seeing, hearing, thinking, talking, all of these are happening based on the intelligence of this body, in fact, which is not something that anybody owns. Everything in this body itself is a perfect harmony of intelligence that expresses itself. And the body never says I. If you look at the body, the liver never says I, the heart never says I, the digestion never says I. But we have a fictitious entity which is created by thought called I, which says I am eating, I am thinking, I am seeing. So if you look at it very factually, the body is free of I, but the mind, which is a product of thought, brings forth this notion of a separate me, and it takes ownership of all activities of the body, starting from simple things as seeing and hearing to thinking and acting, and then we claim credit for it, and then we ascribe credit to others, blame to others. So all of this is rooted in this sense of separation called the me. And that separation called the me is what creates all conflicts, whether it be a conflict inside a house or inside a country or between countries, between religions. All of this is rooted in the same one source, which is the me, which is the ego, which is the false I. So to inquire into and recognize the falsity of this I, and thereby live in harmony with the flow of life itself as one unit, that is the purpose of life. So that is the purpose that's pointed to here by saying Krita Kritya. That is, it is not that specific things are referred to. Everyone with each of the unique strengths we have, unique talents we have, we may do different things. And that is not what Krishna is referring to. What Krishna is referring to is the way we act, not what we do. We can do many things. One can be a great painter, one can be a great programmer, one can be a great dancer and all the rest. But the common factor in all of them today is that everyone thinks I am doing this. And the sense of I is causing division, it's causing comparison, it's causing guilt, pride, attachment, all of it. So to be free of that is the purpose of Shastra. To be free of the false me is the purpose of Shastra. So that's what is referred to here as Kritakritya. That is, accomplishing the only purpose of human life is to be free of this false sense of me. Then we can do whatever we want. The specifics of what we do, whatever we do will be an expression of that holistic love and intelligence, not this separative, fragmentary, egoic action. So that is why Krishna says, this Shastra, knowing this, gives you that wisdom. So that's given only for this chapter, 15th chapter. That's why this chapter is so special, because it contains the essence of the entire Upanishads, the entire Gita. It is a Shastra by itself. In fact, for those who have traveled to Himalayas and all, if you go to any place there, this chapter is chanted before prasad is taken, always. So, for example, when I spent some time in Uttarkashi, there it's routine for everyone to chant the entire 15th chapter. It's also a short chapter, so you're not waiting too long to eat.
Only 20.
20 verses, but it's a very powerful chapter. So everyone chants what we just did. It takes about 10 minutes. We chant the entire 15th chapter, and specifically the verse which came in between, where he talks about digestion. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashrita. That I am the fire of digestion that makes all food digest. We'll see that. So because that verse is there, which is specifically referring to digestion, and also because it's the entire Shastra, this is actually chanted in many places before eating food. So that's the glory of this chapter itself. So with that, we'll go into the chapter. So the very first verse, it's a very beautiful verse. Urdhva moolam adashakham ashvattam prahuravyayam Chandansi yasya parnani yastam vedasa vedavet. So here, what is very mystical representation is given. So the samsara, that is the world as we project it, is compared to a tree, a huge banyan tree, right? Ashwattham. And this banyan tree, he says, has roots above. Urdhva moolam means root, urdhva means above. Roots are above and the branches are below. So normally, of course, we have roots above, roots below and branches going above. Here it says the roots are above and the branches below. And this is a very paradoxical tree. He uses two words here, Krishna. Ashwattham Avyayam. Ashwattham means that which doesn't have any permanence to it. Actually, the word Ashwaha means in Sanskrit tomorrow. So Ashwaha means no tomorrow. It doesn't exist. Before you see, it's gone. And yet it's Avyaya. Avyaya means it never truly goes away either. So it doesn't exist, but it doesn't go away. So that is the nature of samsara. So first, if we understand the reason why this tree is described in this way, then we can understand the paradox, and through that we can understand how to be free of this tree. So urdhva moolam, so the root that is above is, of course, as already pointed out, the one source of all that there is. There is just the pure essence. We can call it consciousness, we can call it simply presence, beingness, or we can simply call it as Ishvara, Brahman. There are so many terms for it. All of this points to just the fact that there is one source from which everything comes forth. Now, this is not just something that Gita refers to or Upanishads refer to, but even the scientists acknowledge, everyone acknowledge that. They are all recognizing that there is one source, and that intuition is what makes people go and look for a unified theory and so on. So there is one source from which everything emanates. And even a very rational view into it will reveal that, because if you look at even from a reductionist standpoint as well, if you look at it and we see that the whole world is made of particles, atoms, everything is made of the same, and everything has the same feature, everything has the same quality. So everything is made of the same source. But beyond that, what is pointed to here is this tree has in its root the sense of identification as me. Because when we look at anyone, for example, starting with a child. So if you look at a little child, we see that the child is free of any sense of me. There is no ego in a child. There is no sense of separation. The little baby crawling, or even when it starts to walk, talk, there is no sense of self. There is just pure response to what is. If it's hungry, it cries, eats, all that there is. But inevitably, through whether it's conditioning or as it is ordained, the sense of a self comes in every child, and it says me. Right? The sense of me, if you can actually look into it, when you point to a child, sometimes if you show a child in a mirror, I don't know if anyone has tried this, they will say it's brother or something. Yeah, they will not say it's me. They don't have this idea that it's me. There is the sense of me is completely absent in a child for a certain time. And when that sense of me is absent, then everything is functioning in the moment for a child. The child doesn't have any psyche, any self. There is no sense of I am this, I am that, I have to do this, none of that. There is just a pure response to stimuli. And there is a pure presence. That's why everyone finds it so endearing to be with a child. But then inevitably, every child develops a sense of self. And by the time they are a certain age, it may be 3, it may be 5, whatever it is, there is a strong sense of me built. And that sense of me is the root of all what we can call the I thought. And that sense of me or the I thought is the root from which this tree of samsara comes about. So there is the ground of being itself, but from the ground of being rises this sense of I thought. And that I thought puts out all these branches, shakha. And these branches are nothing but all the various identifications we have, the various projections we have. So the I thought itself lives through identifying with various projections and various identities. So for instance, it may take the identity of a man or a woman, and then as a relation, as a husband or a wife, a father or a mother, then as an employee, then as a citizen, then as part of a country. And in every one of them, there is the identification that is built. So this me is actually not one fixed entity. It is a constantly fleeting and constantly shape-shifting entity. And it is always changing its shape. So we have this illusion that it is always there. But if you really look closely, it is only holding on to it. That's why it's compared to a ghost sometimes, because it cannot exist on its own. Therefore, it holds on to some identity to be as the me. So if you ask someone, who are you? They would immediately say whatever they are identified with as They may say the name, or they may say I am Indian, I'm American, or they may say I am a techie, or I'm a whatever, or I'm a this. So there is always something after the I am, because the I am cannot stay by itself. So this identification that comes is what is the shakha, the branch, that immediately gets, and it happens instantaneously. And we see this happening every morning. In fact, when you wake up, there is, in the deep sleep, of course, there is no I thought, there is nothing there. We don't know what is there even, because there is just pure silence there. The moment we wake up, the sense of me rises, and then it places itself in the time, in the place, and then it immediately brings forth all the various images. And then what happens is, we are always bringing forth some image corresponding to the situation we are in. So for example, if I'm dealing with my close relation, immediately there's an image in the memory of who am I with respect to him or her, and then who is she with respect to me or me, and there is an image that is immediately coming up, and that image takes over. And then I say that I've done all this, you have done all this, and that's the way we relate to this person. Same thing we do with any abstract idea as well, whether it is nationality, or whether it is ideology, or whether it is even philosophy. We immediately take on an identification that this is me, and then with that identification we divide everything. Okay, this is right, this is wrong, I like this, I don't like this. All this judgment, all this evaluation, all of that comes forth. So that is why it says Ashwattham Avyayam, because on the one hand it doesn't even exist. So that's why it's Ashwattham. That is, the me of this moment and the me of next moment are not the same. It's constantly shifting. On the other hand, it's Avyayam because it's always there in some form or the other. So if you really look at it, that this is seemingly there all the time, but in actuality it is never there, because it's constantly shifting itself. So if you really look at it, that is why they say, if you ask where is this me, and if you look for it, it's actually not there, because it's only based on identification with a particular thought or a particular memory, image, that this lives. And actually what is there is only the image. There is an image in the, so for example, if let's say there is an image built over time as to what kind of a father I am, let's say, or what kind of a husband, or whatever it is, it's just memory. There is a memory in the mind, and what happens is that that memory gets identified as me. There is actually nobody other than that memory. If you really look at it very simply, the brain has memories, and one of the memory happens to be a self-image created, which says that I am this kind of a person, I am very good, I am and all the rest that is built. And that memory takes over as me, and then I get identified with it, and then through that identification I am dealing with the other person. And then the next moment I may be looking at the news, and then a different identity comes up. I may be right or left or this or that, some identity comes up. That's another memory stored in the brain that comes up, and I identify with it, and then I'm like, based on that I say I like this fellow, I don't like this fellow, I like this ideology, I don't. What is talking is not anything other than memory. There is no me talking. There is just memory which is being falsely identified as me, which has taken over the organism and which thinks this is me. But in actuality it's just memory, and it can shift. That's why somebody shifts, even they change, even religions, they change ideologies, everything changes. We think we are so attached to something, and then you find in fact the person who is most attached to something sometimes does a 180 and goes to the other extreme, because nothing is fixed, but we think that is me. And this fixation with memory, which is images, is what causes this tree of samsara. So that's why it is both eternal and yet non-existing. It is always there, apparently, and yet in reality it's not there at all. So that's the paradox why Krishna refers to as Ashwattham Avyayam. Chandamsi Yasya Parnani, and its leaves are the Chanda. Chanda means it can be referred to as Vedas. So in one sense it refers to the fact that there is the Vedic knowledge available to navigate this samsara. So when we have this tree of samsara, which is created because of false identification, then that is where this whole body of knowledge that is there, that helps one navigate this. But to know this, so that's why he says, yes, tam veda sa vedavid. So if one knows this whole thing, so the whole pointer here is, if we know clearly that the very nature of me that I take myself to be is false and it is just an illusion that's built by memory. And what is actually there is only the divine energy. It's the divine energy that is making the body function. It is what is making thinking happen. It is what is making speaking happen. Everything happens by the one divine intelligence. In Bhagavatam, it's referred to as Mahat Tattva, cosmic intelligence. Mahat means cosmic. So the one all-pervading cosmic intelligence is what makes our body function. It's what makes the ant function. It's what makes the sunshine. Everything is functioning through the same intelligence. But the factor that is additional in human beings especially is we have this I thought which is rising and which is taking ownership of the body as me, and though it is not there, Ashwatta, it seems to be always there. It is Avyaya. And then Krishna says, next one, Adaschordvam prasrutastasya shakha gunapravruddha vishaya pravalaha adascha moolan anusantatani karmanu bandhini manushya loke. So here, that's why it says in manushya loke. This is a unique problem to humans, because for humans we have this condition where we have this identification with this sense of me, and this brings forth branches which are both within and without. He says adascha urdhvam, here it's below and above, or we can say also inside and outside. So we, because of this false identification, we create many branches of attachment which are both outside and inside. Outside is I'm attached to a house, or I'm attached to furniture, I'm attached to a relationship, I'm attached to a fixed image of a person. So one of the most dangerous things where this affects everyone is how we hold on to a fixed image of another person as well. We project an image of me, but not only that, we project an image of the other person, and then we expect that person to be that image. We don't see them as they are, because everyone is constantly changing. Their expression is unique and it's changing all the time. The expression here is unique. But the sense of me projects that there is a fixed person there, and I project an image onto that person and say he has to or she has to function like that. And then they don't meet that expectation. There is conflict because of that. They say you are like this, then you are not like this now. So this is a constant source of conflict among us, because in every relationship, the image building is what ruins relationship, wherein we get attached to some version of the other person outside, not the person as they actually are. So this way we put branches outside, branches of attachment with people, and then even more so, as we know, people are attached to a piece of property. Sometimes people cannot let go of a shirt, so many little things. There is so much attachment that is there outside. And then inside, adascha urdhvam, so both within and without. Inside, of course, there is all this attachment. I am this religion, or I am that religion, and I am this country's person, that country's person, and I will, and in the name of God, I will kill other people. So this is the kind of attachment that is there in people inside. The whole idea of building this structure of ideological and emotional attachment within, and looking at everything. So, and how is this sustained or nourished? Is guna pravruddha vishaya pravala. Guna, the three gunas, identification with the gunas, it is watering this tree, he says. So the tree, the samsara, the attachment, which is causing all this conflict, is watered, the tree is watered by gunas and vishayas. Vishaya means objects of the senses. So we saw already in the 14th chapter the gunas, the three gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas, and how all the three gunas which are of prakriti are falsely identified as me, and that is the root of all attachment. So we have a verse which I like to often quote because it covers the essence of it in the 3rd chapter itself, where Krishna says, Prakrute kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha. So he says all actions are done by the three gunas. Ahankara vimudatma karta ahamiti manyate. Only due to ignorance, the fool, he says, vimudha, thinks I am the doer. So for example, now we are speaking or listening, right? Now speaking happens or listening happens through a complex set of processes. If you just simply for a second look at how speaking happens or listening happens, there is the elaborate intelligence of the body with its breathing, with its the way the vocal cords are functioning, the heart has to function correctly. And am I doing any of that? There is no me doing any of that. It's all just happening, right? What is making it all happen? That is what is called the divine intelligence. The all-pervading divine intelligence makes all of this happen. And then there is the brain, which is storing the words, the language, the syntax of the language. All of this is stored, and that's also coming out. So if you really look at it, every single moment, every single action or perception, it happens. But we think I am making it happen. And that is the core illusion. That is why it's guna pravruddha vishaya pravala. So this guna, the three gunas which are making it happen, we think I am those gunas. Right? So we think I am the one who is speaking so well, or I am the one who is speaking so badly today. I am the one who is whatever one might do, reading well, writing well, not doing well. We have all this. One of the most worst form of judgment we do is self-judgment, right? We always judge ourselves. What did they think of me? Will they think right about me? Will they think wrong about me? All the story we are building only because we have first created this idea that I am doing it. That is where the first problem comes. And then we say, okay, what will they think of me? And what, even if they think I am the best person, it's still rooted in illusion. Because there is nobody doing it here, it's just happening. And who is doing it? That is what we call the divine, the all-pervading Ishvara. In fact, one of the meanings of the word Ishvara is the order that pervades the universe. Right? So we don't have this notion of someone sitting up in the sky and managing. This kind of a notion is found in dualistic religions, and that again causes a lot of division, because the logical question is, if divine is is omnipotent, almighty, then there cannot be any might separate from him or her or it, whatever we call it. So that's why we say even an atom cannot move without the divine. So that order which is found in every single atom is what we call Ishvara. The intelligence, the order that makes everything function perfectly, harmoniously, and that's what makes this body function, and it goes and it does whatever it does. But we feed it with this false idea that I am doing it. So that's why it's gunapravruddha vishaya pravalaha. Adascha moolan anusantatani karmanu bandhini manushya. So this, because of this, we create attachment. We create karmanu bandhini, the attachment of doership, as we already saw. Karta ahamiti manyate, we said, right? So when I think I am the doer, I create attachment. And that attachment causes me to put more roots. So he says, that's why this banyan tree example is given. The banyan tree has one root, but if you notice, it goes and then it puts more roots. So that's what we do. There is one root which is the false identification as me, and it creates all this attachment, and every attachment puts more roots. So the tree gets stronger and stronger and spreads more and more. And then he says, Narupam asyeha tathopalabhyate nantona chadir machasam pratishtha ashwattamenam suviruda moolam asanga shastrena dridhena chitva. So this tree, if we really look at it, even though it seems to be all pervading and it seems to be ruling our lives and doing everything, if we look at it, it doesn't have any fixed form. That's why it says Narupam asya, because it's Ashwattham. It doesn't have a fixed quality to it. If I actually look into it, even the very body, as we know, is changing all the time. Every thought is changing. So the beauty of this universe is that it is seemingly eternal, but it doesn't exist the same even one moment, right? So everything is changing all the time. That is the nature of this universe, right? It's like a river that keeps on flowing. So the body is changing every moment. We see it in a photograph between 5 years, but obviously it didn't change in 5 years one day. It's changing every moment, and that's why the change is visible in 5 years. Same is true with thoughts, same is true with ideas, same is true with everything. Everything is constantly changing. So it's actually having no rupam. It doesn't have any form. Because for something to have a form, it has to have a permanence to it. It doesn't have any permanence. It is just something that is apparently there, and it is sustained by this false identification that I am separate and I am experiencing it. When I am having this identification that I am the doer, I am the experiencer, then there is this, because of this separation, we project something fixed and we hold on to something. As we said, it's very apparent in the case of how we hold on to an image of a person or image of a, let's say, even a child or a job or anything. Everything is constantly changing. One of the ways in which this always affects us is we resist change. We don't accept it. When something goes which is not, we are projecting something and something changes suddenly, there is a resistance that comes up because we don't accept it. So that acceptance comes when we recognize that it is never fixed anyway. It is flowing constantly. So it has no form, it has no beginning, no end. But it seems to be always there. So Krishna says that's why Ashwattamenam suviruda moolam asanga shastrena dridena chitva. So you have to uproot it by the weapon of detachment. So the whole problem, as we saw, is attachment, right? When we attach not to not in the sense of even attaching to something outside us, but most importantly attaching to this idea that there is a separate me within who is the doer and the experiencer of the world and all the activities of the world. So if we think that I am separate and I have a independent existence and I am the doer and I am the one who is able to make all this happen, this me and mine, this is what causes attachment. And when that attachment becomes stronger and stronger, as we say, it is nourished more and more with the water of every time we do. So the irony here is every day that we don't look at it, it gets stronger, right? So we get identified with some political ideology or some religious thinking or some relationship issues, whatever it might be. There is just more and more identification. The tree gets more and more strong. But the beauty of it is the entire tree is actually based on just this false idea that there is a separate me. So that's why if you question who is this I, who am I, then we find out that the entire edifice is built on a false premise. There is only the divine intelligence that's flowing. I have all along taken myself to be falsely some fixed entity which is doing things and experiencing things and all of that. But in reality, things just happen. Doing happens, experiencing happens, thinking happens, speaking happens, everything is happening. But this idea of identifying with it and holding on to it is the reason for this illusion. So the way out is detachment, and detachment is not therefore just detaching. So immediately some might think detachment means I have to leave everything and go somewhere. That's not detachment, because then you are still going with the same identity within, and that's not going to free us. But what really detachment means is to be free of the sense of me. To detach from the sense of me and mine is detachment. And when that happens, then he says, Tataf padam tat parimargitavyam yasmin gatana nivartanti bhoya. So then we recognize through this inquiry, through this recognition, we attain the or realize the eternal truth of what is. And that is free of any division, any sense of me, any ego, and all there is only the pure expression of divine intelligence that's operating. So just as a child functions, if one is free of the me, then all activities can go on. But there is nobody claiming that I am the doer or I am the experiencer, as we said, all of that. So that freedom from the false me is the supreme state, because then there is nobody here to even feel bondage. The whole idea that there is bondage is only for the false me. When the false me is seen as false, what remains is only the truth. So that's why we can never actually go to the truth. We can only see the false as the false, and the truth reveals itself. So, for instance, Ramana Maharshi once gave a nice example. He said, if a room is full of clutter, how do you create space in the room? You don't actually create space, you just remove the clutter, right? And the space reveals itself. So similarly, we have the clutter of all these attachments. And all of these attachments, the good thing with this clutter is, unlike the clutter in a room, you have to remove one by one all objects. But the clutter within us is all rooted in one false premise, which is the sense of me. So I don't have to go each. So if I go that way, which is what some people do, I have to let go of this food, I have to let go of this, I have to stop watching this, I have to stop doing this. That way is never ending. because something or the other will keep coming. But if you look at the root of all the attachments, it is the sense of me. So then if you let go of that me, and you cannot even let go because there is nobody to let go, you just recognize its falsity. You just inquire. That's why the whole question, who am I, is just not to be made into any kind of a method or any kind of practice, but it is a direct insight. If we look at it very carefully now, we see that there is just no me here, and there is only the divine intelligence that's operating. And that recognition instantly frees one out of this false me. So if we look at the me rising, for instance, at any moment, right now also, or any time, so if we are listening to something, sometimes we can very clearly see that there is a image of a listener that has come, right? I may have an idea. I may say I have read all these books and this is right, this is wrong, and then I use all that to compare and say whether this is right or wrong. So we are actually not listening completely, but we are listening through an image. So if we really look at it and say who is listening now, then we find that there is an image that's come up from memory and that's listening, and that very image is preventing the actual listening. So when we recognize this, and therefore the false me is dissolved in that, then we actually see the person in front of us as they are, right? So the reason we judge other people, for example, when someone comes to us, why do we judge them? Because we have a fixed standpoint, and that standpoint is what is judging other people. When we have no fixed standpoint, we are an open space. In the open space, anybody comes, they are just accepted as they are, right? That is why, in a very simply put, in Uddhava Gita, Krishna says, you see everyone and everything as me, as divine, right? So how can we do that, right? We cannot. The reason we don't see it's not something to be theoretically done, right? We cannot impose that, say, oh, I have to see him as Krishna, I have to see her as Krishna. That's never going to happen, because it's a mental exercise then. But if we recognize that the one who is seeing is the problem, I am not seeing you as you are, but I am seeing you through some idea, and then I'm using that idea as me to look at you. And when I see that that very seeing is based on a false me, and that goes away, then there is the divine vision. There is just pure unconditional love, because everyone is a unique expression of the divine. Everything, everyone, everywhere is. That's why Krishna says everyone is divine. Even in Gita, Krishna says, Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. Everyone is Vasudeva. Right? So that is the truth. But we don't see that truth because we are always caught in this fixed me, which is trying to judge people, put them in boxes. We say, okay, this person is good, this person is this is that, this is that. So all this happens because of this viewpoint we have of being caught in an image. And when we recognize that image is only a fiction created by memory, and that's let go, then there is an emptiness, there is a total stillness. And that stillness brings forth the fullness of everything. So it's like how if a cup is empty, then the space in the cup reveals itself. If the cup always has something, then you cannot add anything to the cup, right? So if the mind is already holding on to some image, then from that image, everyone and everything seems okay. I like him, I don't like him, all this rest, judgment, comparison. And unfortunately, we teach this to children also, right? Comparing with others, competing and all this. But if you really look at it and step back and see that everything is based on this false idea, right? And actually speaking, everyone, everything is perfectly an expression of the divine intelligence. All there is only the divine. And that's why Krishna says everything is Vasudeva. All there is Vasudeva. So how do we get there? That's why Krishna says, Nirmana moha jitasanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinivritta kamaha dvandvair vimukta sukha dukkha sanyair gacchantya mudha padam avyayam tat. So then, when we are free of illusion, moha and mana, pride, and sanga dosha, attachment, free of that. And sanga dosha can also be seen as false association with people also. So all of this happens also because everyone is reinforcing each other's conditioning, right? So when I'm talking to someone, I'm also caught in my ego, he's also caught in the ego, then it's two egos talking to each other, and it's constantly reinforcing each other. So that's why satsang is very beautiful, because when we come to satsang, then that is exposed. Then there is no ego there, there is just the presence of Bhagavan. All there is the presence of Bhagavan, and that's alone acknowledged as truth. So we let go of false attachment and thereby desires, and we are then free of duality. Dvandvai vimuktaha. So all dualities again come only because of this. And when we are free of dualities, then we see it clearly. And that clarity we see is what Krishna says is the clarity which makes everything happen. So he says, na tad bhasayate suryo na shashanko na pavakaha yadgatva na nivartante tadhama paramam. So that intelligence, that divine energy that makes the sun shine, that makes the moon, so it is not something that is illuminated by the sun or the moon, because the very power that makes the sun shine is the same power. The divine intelligence is what makes the sun shine. The sun itself, how powerful it is, but it is also going to go away one day, right? The moon is even more so. So all of these are only, so that's why they are not, that which is not illuminated by any of this, but that which illuminates everything. So the reason the sun even shines is because of this divine intelligence. The reason the moon shines is because of this. That is the supreme essence. And Krishna says, that is my true nature. Tad dhama paramam mama. That is my true nature. The true nature of Krishna or the divine is the all-pervading intelligence which can take any form, any shape. So we cannot therefore lock anything into a particular form. So it has, that's why even in Bhagavatam it says, when it talks about Krishna's avatars or Narayana's avatars, it says avatarani asankhyan. It says uncountable actually. We say mainly Dashavatar 10, that's principal avatars. And then there is more in Bhagavatam itself. Kapila is there.
22.
Many, 22, 20, some count is 24. There is Hayagriva, then keeps on going. Many are there. Then eventually it says that it's uncountable. Because in reality speaking, and that's why the next verse it says, Mamevamsho Jivaloke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. So he says, everyone is actually my Amsha only. Everyone is essentially the Amsha of Krishna. But there is the false identification as me. So a nice example to look at it is how the space is all pervading. But if we have a bunch of pots, let's say, and within each pot there is space, that space within the pot is non-different from the space that is outside. But if the space inside the pot thinks I am the pot, that is the problem we have. So there is no entity inside the pot except the same space that's all pervading. But we think that I am this pot because I am inside this pot. So that is the jiva. What we call the jiva is the false identification with the body as me. It's like exactly as how space inside a pot identifies as the pot, rather than recognizing that the space within and without are one and the same. The pot can be destroyed or it can be there for some time, but the space is the same. But when we create this false idea that I am the space inside the pot, and then we say I have to realize Bhagavan who is outside me, right? This is the idea we have. So what Krishna points out in multiple places, that's why is the one, there's a beautiful verse again in the 6th chapter, I think, where Krishna says, the one who sees that I am inside everyone and everyone is inside me, he realizes the truth. He says, Yomam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mayi pashyati. Tasyaham na pranashyami sachamena pranashyati. One who sees me in everyone and everyone in me, which is to say that there is only the divine. So this example will reveal, if you look at the spot, all the parts are within space and the space is within all the parts. So in the same way, we are all within the so-called bodies, all of this are within this one divine energy, and within the body is also the same divine energy. So all there is only the divine. So this idea that there is a me, and then the me then takes on some sadhana and says I have to realize the truth, and then comes up with all of this. All of this is rooted on the same false notion that I am separate and I have to realize something that's outside me. What the direct pointer of what Krishna says is, that's why bhakti, in Bhakti Yoga too, Krishna says, if you recognize that all there is only the divine, and that is the vision of the Vishwarupa Darshana too, that everything is me, he shows. So when we recognize that everything here is the divine, then there is freedom from this idea of me as this pot. So the space inside the pot, when it recognizes that it's just space, then it's not caught in this idea. Otherwise, it says, Manashashtani indriyani prakrutistani karshati shariram yadavapnoti yachapyutkramatiishvaraha grihitvaitani sanyati vayurgandhani vashaya. So he says, otherwise what happens is this false idea of me, it takes everything, all these attachments, right? Manashashtani, there is this 6 senses, the 5 senses, and the 6th is the mind. It takes all these impressions and it carries all this as me. And then with this, it takes different bodies too. So one clear example we can see, we don't even have to go to this notion of reincarnation and all that, which is there. But even within a day, so let's say I have all these identifications. Now I go to sleep, then in the dream, I take a different body, but it's the same identification. So all this identification that is there, it takes another body in the dream, and then it does whatever it does, and then comes back to waking state, then it comes back to this body, so it happens even in our daily life. That, and in the dream, if you look at it, it's all there. Manashashtani indriyani. We have the mind, we have all the 5 plus 1, 6 senses are all functioning, and we think that's me in the dream. And then we come out of the dream and then we say, this is me. So this sense of carrying impressions from one body to another happens within a day also for us. So we don't have to even necessarily, because people may say, how do you know there is, we don't know whether there is the same impression goes to the next life or it came from previous life. There is no reason to even speculate about it, because we see it now. That in a day we do this. When you go to sleep, you carry another body. But it happens, so there is this sense that everyone comes because of all these impressions. And then because of all this, they get caught in it. So vimudha na anupashyanti pashyanti jnana chakshusha. So that's why one who is ignorant, he doesn't see all this. So when we are caught in ignorance, then we are having a strong sense of ownership of me. And therefore we are caught in this idea. And then even when we come to a spiritual ground, we still carry this me, and we say that this me now has to realize God or to experience God or whatever we may say. So that's why the direct pointer of Gita or of any great sage is, find out if there is anyone separate even now. Or to put it differently, simply recognize that there is only the divine that is functioning through you even now. There is realization is not therefore something to be done in time. It can only happen now. If we look at it right now, we will see that every moment unfolds perfectly by this divine order. We have so many things happening, and we have all the various events that happen. Things are so unrelated. Everything, as they say, that sometimes they say, there is a famous expression that a butterfly fluttering in one part of the world causes a hurricane in another part of the world, because there is a sequence of events which are all related. So we don't know what causes what, and everything. So everything is. So when we look at this and we recognize this false idea that there is a me here who is doing anything, and we are free of this, then instantly what is here is only divine. So we don't have to then engage in any time-bound practice of any kind, but this is something that requires alertness every moment. So each moment, when this, because as we saw, this tree keeps on coming. So when it tries to come, we have to be very alert. And when we are very alert, and that alertness can come about also through, in fact, very easily through loving devotion. That's why when we recognize through a loving devotion that I am not doing anything, everything is done by God, done by Bhagavan, then that very loving devotion will remove this false sense of me and ego, and we just see this all the time. If someone sings well, we praise Bhagavan for making him sing well. If someone does something well, the important thing is to never get caught in this idea of either here or there ascribing individual agency. But if we recognize that everything happens just perfectly as the divine has ordained, then we are free of this false sense of me, and that requires alertness. So because we have this, as we saw earlier, this strong movement of this false identification, which is constantly taking us towards identifying as me, and I have done this and I am this and that. So we have to be very alert to recognize this, and that's why this is another way to put this. The same question, who am I, is just a way to be very alert. Anytime a thought rises, anytime an identification rises. So it's not something that's to be just done for half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening or something. It's throughout the day, wherever I am. If there is a constant awareness of this false sense of doership rising, every single moment, if there is an awareness, and that very awareness will dissolve it. If I am not aware, I am unconsciously going through life like a dream. That's why awakening is literally, so when we are sleeping, that's what happens. We are unconsciously identified with the character, and that character is doing what it does. But even while waking, we do the same thing. The same movement is happening where the character has taken over, an image has taken over, and it's doing. So people, we see this, people kill others. Why do they do that? Because they are caught in a character, they are caught in an image, and that image pushes them to do something very heinous. Many people, it's no different from being under the influence of some drug. This me is the worst drug because it causes us to get identified, whether it's a terrorist who kills, or whether it's people in war, or whether it is any kind of conflict, anything, all of this is because there is an identification with the me. And even in a very simple way, we may sit and judge some terrorist or some criminal, but if we look at our own life, we will see that how do I deal with my spouse or my loved one? Do I deal with them from this perspective of an image as me, or am I unconditionally accepting them with love as they are? Because if I'm caught in this fixed image as me, and then I've projected an image onto them that you are this way, I am this way, then I'm not unconditionally loving them as they are. Right there is division, there is this. So every little conflict, even in the house, comes forth because of this. So there is no difference between a conflict inside a house and a conflict between two countries. The only difference is the scale of the conflict. It's massive if it's caught in some, and it can cause, but it's the same problem. The problem is false identification with an image that then judges other people based on that image and says this is right, this is wrong, and based on that we are caught in this. So to be free of this image making is the essence of self-inquiry. When I'm free of this image making as me, then there is nothing to hold on to. There is no fixed center or no fixed ego at all. There is only an open presence. That open presence is empty of ego. It is full of life itself. That's why it's both. Some people even argue whether it's shunya or purna. It's actually both, because it's empty of ego, shunya. It's full of life itself, purna. And that total emptiness of ego is what brings about stillness. And when that stillness is there, that stillness accepts everything as is. So that's what Krishna says. The one who is very clear, he sees that yatanto yoginas chainam pashyanti atmanyavastitam. So one who is the real yogi, who really sees it, he perceives it clearly. And that perception or that clear recognition, realization, reveals to us that everything is happening through the divine intelligence. Now Krishna says, Yad aditya gatam tejo jagat bhasayate akhilam yet chandramasi yet chavnav tat tejo vidhimamakam. So he says, then you realize that it is that one intelligence that's making the sun shine, the moon shine, fire glow, herbs to be nourished. And then he says this famous verse, Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashritaha Pranapana Samayuktaf Pachamyannam Chaturvidham. So then that's the same intelligence that Krishna says, I am the fire of digestion. Vaishvanara means the fire of digestion. Inside the stomach, that is digesting the 4 types of food. So that's why we can never restrict Bhagavan to anything, because he is actually everything. Right? If we say he is this particular, if we just say he's only this form or this way, that is only the mind saying it. The mind that is very limited, it says this is how God is. But in reality, God is everything. So here Krishna gives an example. He says, I am the fire in your stomach. So now, is someone in the stomach playing a flute? No. So it's everything is Krishna. So the same Krishna who's beautifully playing a flute in Vrindavan, he can take the fire, the digestive fire inside the stomach and digest everything. So he says, Pachamyannam Chaturvidam. Chaturvidam means 4 types of food are there actually. It's very, Ayurveda says food that is chewed, that is like we bite and chew, food that is drunk, food that is licked, and food that is sucked inside. So we eat in 4 ways. And in fact, the right way to eat is to do all 4 with every food. So actually Ayurveda says, when you eat food, you have to bite it so well that it becomes a liquid. Then you actually, the liquid is in your tongue, and you are tasting the liquid through licking that liquid, and then you are sucking it and swallowing it inside. So if you eat it properly, then you do all 4 with every many times we hurry and we just swallow. But So anyways, Chaturvidam means 4 types are there, or 4 ways to eat food. And another way to look at it is all the four primary senses are also involved in food, some say. Which is also true, because food is seen, which is eyes, food is smelled, which is nose, food is tasted, which is tongue, and food is touched, which is touch. So that's also another way to look at it. But the primary meaning is the 4, that is chewing, drinking, licking. That's called lehyam. That's why in Sanskrit we have lehyam, right? Lehyam means that which we lick and drink, lick and eat. Like we have this chavan parashana, it's lehyam. We just lick it. And then sucking is like, for example, sugar cane. That's things like that. We just suck it directly. This is 4 types of food that and Krishna says that all 4 that's digested is digested by me. So when we come to this recognition that we see that God is everything, then Krishna gives a few examples. That's all. He cannot give everything, but he gives a sense that your very digestion, because the whole body functions because of food. So it's very fundamental to it, right? The body is nothing but food. Body is, that's why called Annamaya. And that very food that gets digested and nourishes is happening only because of the divine intelligence. So we make all these grand pronouncements, but one day if digestion doesn't work, everything stops. Right? So we cannot do anything if digestion, and that digestion is Krishna says, I am the one who digests your food. So everything that happens is coming forth from him. So then he summarizes all with a very beautiful verse. He says, Sarvasya chaham hridisannivishta matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedaischa sarvairahameva vedyo vedantakrit veda videva chaham. He says, therefore, I am the presence in the heart. Sarvasya cha aham hridi sannivishta. I am present in the heart of everyone as the very presence. So as we said, the space within the pot is the same presence that is there throughout the universe too. So we have this false notion that there is a separate jiva and there is some Brahman. So that's why even in Bhagavatam it says, the very conclusion of Bhagavatam, it says the essence of Bhagavatam is Brahma Jiva Ekatvam. That is, there is only one infinite being. And that infinite being is manifest through everyone and everything. So then Krishna says a couple of verses which actually goes into this very beautifully. He says, Dvavimo Purusho Loke Kshara Akshara Evacha Kshara Sarvani Bhutani Kutasto Akshara Uchyate. So there are 2 types of things in this world, right? One is the living entities, and the other is the energy within the living entity which is animating the living entity. So Kshara means that which falls down, right? That which is impermanent or temporary. So if you look at the body is insentient and it is temporary, and it can only, it's a conglomerate of elements. It goes back to elements. But then there is the animating energy within the body, the presence, beyond the mind. So we are not even talking of the mind or the intellect. So beyond the mind is also nothing but matter. It is just brain which is causing thinking to happen. And then that's why we have these koshas too, right? Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vigyan. All of this is just body actually. There is just body at subtler and subtler levels, which is all Kshara. But what is Akshara is that presence within which is making the body function. So it's like the same example of the space within the pot is what is holding the pot. So similarly, the presence within this body, the divine energy that is animating this body, is what is making this body function. But then Krishna says, this Kshara and Akshara, beyond both is Purushottama. He says, Yasmat ksharamati aksharaadapi chottamaha atosmi loke vedecha pratitah purushottamaha. So, if you look at the all-pervading space, it is beyond both the pots and beyond the space within each pot. We are identified as the space within the pot, as me. And that is the sense of akshara in this characterization. What Krishna calls akshara is the me that is identified with the pot, the space within the me that is identified as the pot. The space within the pot that is identified as me. In reality, there is only space. There is only the divine. And that divine transcends this. Whether there is one identified as me or not identified, it is the same divine energy. So, whether it is Ramana Maharishi or whether any of us, the body is functioning with the same divine energy. The only difference is there is no illusion that there is a separate me here. There is only the divine. Here we carry that illusion, and that's why we think I'm separate. And so that absence, when that illusion goes away, then we recognize that there is only infinite intelligence all around. That infinite intelligence is Purushottama. That is that which is not restricted to any particular body. We think the core illusion we have is, even when we talk of things like Sakshi and all of that, we think I am the witness of the thoughts of this body and I am the witness of the activities. All of this is again rooted in the sense that there is a separate me identified with the activities of this body. But what Krishna is pointing to is there is beyond this false sense of separation, and the physical body that encases this false sense of separation is the all-pervading divine intelligence. And that all-pervading divine intelligence is untouched by whether one is identified or not. It is the same divine intelligence that comes forth as also this false identification as me. So that's why earlier he said, Matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. Wisdom also comes from me, ignorance also comes from me. So this false idea also comes, but grace also comes, and by grace, when we gather together in satsang, we recognize that the cause of suffering is only this false identification. And when this false identification is seen and recognized as false, then all there is only Purushottama, the one who is all-pervading divine, who is both within and without. There is no separation anymore. Kshara, Akshara are both seen as simply appearances in Purushottama. That is, both the physical body of the living entities and the apparent sense of presence in the body as me are both simply appearing in the one all-pervading divine, which is Purushottama. And when we recognize that, then we are free of this false idea of me. So he says, Yomam eva sammudo janati Purushottamam sa sarvavid bhajati mam sarva bhavena bharata. So the one who knows me clearly in this way as Purushottama, sa sarvavid bhajati mam sarva bhavena bharata. So he says, he sees me as everything in every way. So that is the whole pointer of Gita itself, and that is the direct pointer of Purushottama Yoga in particular, is that this is the divine vision. The divine vision is that there is no identification with any sense of separation as false me, but a complete sense of, that's where we can use the word also surrender. So when we say surrender, all it means is not that I am surrendering to Bhagavan, but recognizing that I don't even exist, but God alone exists. That is surrender. The false sense that I exist is preventing surrender. That is the symbolism again with the story of Bali Maharaj too. When Bali Maharaj was asked to surrender, first he surrendered everything on earth, then he surrendered everything on heaven. Then the third, what can he surrender? Yourself, right? So the foot of Trivikrama was put on the head of Bali. That symbolizes that not only do I surrender all the possessions as belonging to Bhagavan, but the possessor, that is the idea that I am here, is also surrendered. In other words, there is nobody here other than Bhagavan. That is why self-knowledge, self-realization, and God realization are one and the same. Because when we recognize that the sense of self as we carry it is false, is only built through false identification, and thereby it is negated and it is dissolved, then what is left is only God. That is God realization. So we don't have to then make any difference between the two, because that God realization is true self-realization, because that is the only self there is, and that is not something that I can ever say as I, because it is the very presence itself that is announcing itself through every one of us. So that divine presence that is found in all particles of matter, that is found in every living entity, that is found in every human being, that is also coming forth as this false identification as me, and that is also coming forth as this recognition of the falsity of me. All of it is the one divine intelligence. And when we recognize this, then we awaken to this in our heart as the presence of Bhagavan here and now. He says that's why Sarva Bhavena Bharata. Everything is seen as Bhagavan. Everything, everyone, everywhere is seen only as Purushottama. And that, to end it again, he says, Iti Guhyatamam Shastram Idam Muktam Mayanaka. This is the most confidential or the most sacred, most divine wisdom which is revealed in this Shastra of Purushottam Yoga. And knowing this, Etad Buddha Buddhiman Syat Krita Krityascha Bharata. So knowing this, you have accomplished everything. As we began with it, we can end with the same verse, that knowing this, not knowing as knowledge, but recognizing this and thereby being free of this false identification and recognizing that it's only the divine that is all pervading, that awakens true love, true devotion, true wisdom, because then we do not see any difference, we do not see any duality, we see infinite variety in the expression. Everyone is unique, everything is unique, but all the infinite expressions are an expression of the same one intelligence. And that, when that awakening comes, then there is no comparison left. There is no competition left. There is no envy. There is nothing, because whatever I am doing here is perfect, because that's what the divine is doing. Whatever you are doing is perfect, because that's what is doing. So then we can celebrate each other, because everyone is unique. The beauty of this expression of the divine is everyone and everything is unique. No two blades of grass are even equal, actually, but they are all coming from the same one source. So this is the subtle, that's why it's called Guhyatamam Shastram. It's very subtle, because this gross idea of equality will again create problem. Everybody is equal, and then that creates one problem. On the other hand, if we say everybody is different and then that creates a different problem. Either one gets caught in competition or one gets caught in some kind of autocratic idea of imposing equality and all that. But if we come to this realization, which is so holistic, that there is infinite diversity on the ground of unity. There is one source and infinite expression. And when we awaken to this, then everything is celebrated. Then we don't have to ever compare with anyone else, because there is no basis for comparison. If someone is very good at something, then it's very beautiful to celebrate it, because it's the divine expressing there in that way. If someone is very good at something else, that's very good. Then, and this is the way to raise children, for example, this is the way to live in relationships, everything. Then you don't teach them to compare with another person, another child, but you say, you recognize the divinity of each child and encourage what they are good at. And thereby you can bring the best out of children, we can bring the best out of adults, we can live a life which is free of conflict, free of any kind of strife. And that is the essence of the purpose of human life, Krita Krityascha Bharata. So this way Krishna ends this chapter by saying this is the purpose of human life, is to live in this vision of divine every moment. To see Bhagavan every moment is the essence of Gita.
You said it's a Shastra by itself. What are those attributes of this chapter that makes it a Shastra?
It is just that it lays out the entire scope of the wisdom very concisely, because every other chapter goes into a particular aspect which is all important. But so, for example, we saw the various gunas in 14th chapter, which describes understanding the nature in which gunas function. Of course, they are also, in every chapter, Krishna brings to the same recognition in the end that the gunas are functioning as the divine intelligence, and that includes every activity that you think you are doing. But sometimes, in some chapters rather, a particular aspect of it is emphasized. Right? In Purushottama Yoga, everything, it starts with the whole nature of this tree of samsara, this tree of attachment, how the tree is sustained, how the tree first comes forth by this false idea of me, how it is sustained and nourished by more and more desires and more attachment. It takes more and more root. And how to be free of this tree by being free of the sense of me. And what is that recognition? When that freedom from me comes forth, then what is the nature of that recognition is that it is all pervading, in the sense of it is that which makes everything, everyone happen everywhere, from the sun and the moon to people to herbs to everything. And that is true surrender. That's why he says, Tameva Chadyam Purusham Prapadye, he says. So that is surrender. Prapadye means to surrender. So, and that is surrender. And that is the recognition of jnana, which comes forth from the heart. And that situates us in the highest expression of human life itself. So all of this is covered in Purushottama Yoga.
In the first verse itself, you talk about the upside down tree. Why upside down? What's the concept of the upside down?
It's upside down because the symbolism there is that the source is the one that's on top. See, the infinite being is above all. So what we descend out of it into this attachment. Normally, a tree grows this way, which is a very natural, healthy growth of a tree. But here it's not a good, this tree is to be cut. Why? Because it's descending. It's taking us away from this sense of or rather, it is through this sense of attachment, it's taking us away from the abidance in the one infinite being. So it descends down into all these desires and attachments and all of that, and that in turn causes us to get caught. So it takes us down. The real simple pointer of whether we call it Advaita or whether we call it whatever we call it, right, is that there is only one divine essence everywhere, right? I don't even, that's all it's pointing to again and again in the Gita too, is that there's only the one, and that's therefore non-dual. There is no two there. The core misconception we have is that I am a separate entity and there is the universe which is outside of me. That's the core misconception we all carry. And what this is pointing to is that the very seer is part of the universe. And it's the same, whatever is pervading the whole universe is what's pervading this body too, including thoughts and including memory and including everything, and including the sense of me. So there is nothing other than the divine. All there is only this one divine. And when that recognition comes forth, that is non-duality. Actually, that's why if you look at it, every relationship, for example, we if we operate from this recognition, from this ground, then every relationship can be an expression of divine love, right? Because when there is no holding on to any image of the other person or of this here, then just there is an acceptance of what is. You don't expect them to fit a pattern you have created in the mind. This is how you were yesterday, why are you not like this today? This is what causes us to bring forth conflict. When we accept everyone as they are, then that is love. Otherwise, we are always dividing. We are saying you have to be like this, why are you not like this, why did you do? So that same movement is what happens between nations, between religions, right? My idea of God is right, your idea is wrong, right? And then we have a holy war or whatever, so all of this happens because of the same conflict between what the mind projects as what should be.
An
Image, yeah. So that's why Ramana Maharshi famously said, right, that the best service you can offer this world is your self-realization. You know this quote, right? Because if I am caught in an image, whatever I do outside is going to be only causing more confusion, right? I may think this is right, and then I'll go and engage in activism of some kind or engage in this or that. And there is always conflict that comes forth because of that. And that's why every so-called revolution only creates more conflict, right? One government gets thrown out, another mess comes, or one political system goes, another mess comes, because it's not rooted in this ground of love, right? And that starts at home, that starts here. So if one is free of this, then one can do anything. It'll all be right, whether in the house or in the society, and then the role comes forth, right? Whatever one is equipped to do, one can do. That's why this wisdom, Arjuna has given this wisdom, because Arjuna can even fight the war with this, right? You don't have to stop yourself from doing anything. but you can operate out of this wisdom of clarity, and then that brings forth clear action without any sense of doership. Then there is no pride or guilt, and there is just total energy with which action happens. See, one of the important points we have to recognize is the sense of how to achieve something again comes because we are projecting time as a reality in which something will happen later, right? And that's already the illusion that has projected the false sense of self. The realization cannot happen anywhere but now, right? So every verse is pointing to the truth of now, and so it is both, you could say, the what and the how, but not how as in I will get it tomorrow, or I have to engage in this for 10 years and one day so all of this is what the mind will project. But what is pointed to here is it's you are already what you're looking for, because in reality there is no you, there is only the divine. So when we recognize that, then we are free of this false sense of division and comparison and all of that. But it also requires us to live with great alertness and attention, because it is not something that, okay, I see this now. You see, many people have this, right? There may be a glimpse into this total peace. There is absolutely no disturbance, there is no chatter, there is nothing, there is just total peace. Then you get up and then some activity comes up or some relationship comes up and it triggers something and you're immediately caught in the me. So therefore it is a question of being alert every moment. That's the how. It's not about how as in, see, when we say how, normally we are looking for an activity that over time will give a result. But that's not what this is. That's why, for example, Shankara very beautifully and vehemently says that Jnanateva Kaivalyam. He says freedom is only through direct insight, not through action. Right? He says, and in fact, he says very clearly, jnana and karma can never be combined. Because people think, I can do all these actions and then we can do this. No, this is jnana, technically it's called jnana karma samuchaya. He says that's not, you cannot, in effect, what he's saying is you cannot do this through time. It's only, jnana is now, right? And that now is every moment. So now is always now. So the direct recognition is something that's an alive, alert presence. And it has to be always there. If something comes up, then one has to immediately employ this simple question of who is this I that's rising, and be free of it. See, because another thing that beautifully, see, Shankara's commentary, he says very nicely, and it's very logically also, he says anything that comes through time will go also away through time. Right? Anything that becomes, unbecomes. That's the nature of this world. So if realization is something that can come through time, it will also go away through time. So that's why it's not something that is through time that you get. It is only now. And so there is no how in that sense. See, if you ask me how to learn Python or whatever, right? You have to, there's a time, there is a process you go through, you understand, you get it, and then one day you know Python, right? But that's not how this is the only difference. It is there is nothing new to learn, and there is no new skill to attain. It is only removal of a false ignorance, and that can happen only now.
But even though it means, I mean, I see your point, but also we discuss about Chitta Shuddhi, Chitta Ekagrata, because not every person instantly gets it in the now.
Yeah.
Therefore, the sense of, you got to purify your mind to Karma Yoga that will make you easily see the reality, right?
Yeah, that's all of that is also again only making this. We could look at it in multiple ways, but the thing is, see, for example, Ramana Maharshi used to use a Tamil expression. It's called Chunga Chavadi. I don't know if you've heard. It's called toll booth, right? He said, no matter what you do, you have to enter this toll booth, right? The toll booth is who is doing this practice, right? So I don't know if you'd say Chunga Chavadi Tappadu in Tamil. It's a famous expression. That means you cannot escape this toll booth. So he would say, you can say, I'll go there, go here, go there, go there. Finally, you have to come to this toll booth. Why not come now? Sorry, you would ask. So it's all a question of what is. We can postpone it by saying we need all this, and that may be the way it happens in some people, and that's fine. But if one is ready to inquire, then one can ask this question even now. So, yeah, so that's why both are true. You could say, like Ashtavakra Gita says, Ya Gati Sa Mati. He says, the way we think, Ya Mati Sa Gati. So the way we think, that's where it happens. So if we think we need Chitta Shuddhi, there will be Chitta Shuddhi needed. But the moment we think I can look at it directly now, then you can look at it directly now. So the direct invitation is look at it now. That's all. Why postpone?
Isn't there a concept of time when you say if you get mukti now, you're free from being born again? So when you say born again, that's the concept of time too.
Yeah, so that's not important for us to even focus on, because who's even born again, right? So that's why this idea that I am born and I need to get mukti, and after mukti I'll not be born, all of this is based on the same core illusion. So there is nobody here in the first place. That's the highest truth. There's only the divine. See, again, I've quoted this verse many times, but it's a famous verse in Mandukya Karika that Ramana Maharshi used to quote a lot too. It's a beautiful, it says, Na nirodho na cha utpattir na baddho na cha sadakaha na mumukshu na vaimukta ityesha paramarthata. He says there is no such thing as a sadhaka, there is no such thing as bondage, na baddha, na mumukshu na vaimukta. There is no such thing as mukti. This is the final truth. We think the idea of liberation is only for the false me, which then projects time and says, I'll not be born again and all of this. The recognition that there is nobody to be liberated is liberation. See, I mean, put it very simply, you can say that if everything is divine, then who is there to be liberated? It's the divine playing the game of being in bondage. That's all.